Well, hello and good day out there. Today's footage was a day where we had an opportunity to take care of some outdoor stuff. Back in end of November, so uh, rain-free days were pretty rare. We have this little pile of scrap wood that was set here for when we had some family coming to visit, so we could burn things, have some nice campfires, but it just kind of sat there and needs to be taken care of, so I decided I was going to go ahead and burn it. However, because it's been sitting out, it's all wet, and that's always a challenge, so this yard torch, I believe Garden Dragon, I think is the brand or model or something, but has come in super handy. And this 30-pound propane tank was actually given to us by a friend because it's old enough that it doesn't fit the new regulation requirements, and they didn't have any devices that could actually attach to it. Our old yard dragon still attaches to those old tanks, so 30 pounds of 30 pounds of free propane is always a good thing, and it's lasted us about 3 years, I think, of lighting fires. Although it took a good chunk of propane to get this one going, but I just figured this would be something I could keep that pile burning once I got it started, while we did our other stuff and while we took care of processing chickens, which is a regular thing for us. We don't actually raise them specifically as a meat breed, but we do raise them specifically as meat birds. So we actually have a rooster, and we let the rooster do his business, and a couple times a year we end up with baby chicks. While we could definitely order more like regular scheduled chicks, if we wanted to, and then you'd have a little bit more control over the breed and whatever. We just don't think that extra level of planning and cost and stress is worth it. One of the things we love about having the chickens raise the chicks is that we've actually never had problems with them. Well, I take that back. We did have one who snuck out into the forest, laid her nest hidden in the forest, and we didn't find it until she actually hatched the eggs. We lost a good chunk of that litter just because predators found her and she wasn't in the coop where she was protected. So lesson learned. And we now count our chickens every time they come in at night. We're working on a fence to get them a fenced-in area, but it keeps getting bumped down in priority. That's something that we definitely are going to be working on. We're going to remodel our garden this year and change the way the boxes are all set up, and possibly even change where the garden is located on our property. So when we do that, we're gonna definitely finish up that chicken run fence. But aside from that, we've never actually had problems with the chickens. In fact, they tend to lay and hatch around the same time. They tend to become broody around the same time. So we usually have 2 or 3 or 4 that are broody at the same time, and they end up helping each other, and they just kind of follow each other around, and the chicks just become one group of chicks and don't really care as much who their mom is. And then the moms teach them how to eat, how to scratch, everything they need to know. So we don't actually have to worry about that. It's been pretty awesome. And so whenever that takes place, then we end up with some chickens, and when they get old enough, then we process them and put them in the freezer, so we have that and they just go back to laying eggs. it's to me far easier than the whole idea and concept of spending your time trying to find, buy the eggs or chicks and raise them and deal with the fact that you have to show them where the water is and hope they don't drown themselves in it, stuff like that. The downside is that it's a little less regular. Sometimes we have a bunch, sometimes we don't have as many. We have plans to build a kind of a mobile chicken coop, basically. It'll essentially be a old camper trailer frame that we'll build a coop on and have two sides of it. And one side will have several different brooding areas in it by default. So each nesting area will be its own brooding area. There'll be bigger nesting areas because we'll be able to close that off from the rest of the flock once they start to brood. We'll give them a few days to lay a few more fertile eggs, and then we'll close that so that the rest of the birds don't bug her or try and kick her off the nest or whatever. And then they'll just start using the next nesting area. And then when somebody decides to go broody, we'll do the same thing and close that off, and each one will be 3x4. And they'll each have their own little outdoor area that we can set up, and the other half of the coop, or maybe the other third of the coop, I guess. I'm still working on the design idea, but that would be a regular coop, and then we'd actually have basically two sets of mobile fencing. So what we can move it to a new area, set it up, and the flock with the rooster has one fence. The flock without the rooster has the other fence, and we can, if we need to, when chickens get old and quit laying, then we can cull them out of the flock and replace them with some from the other flock, so it won't be as much of a hierarchy shock, because they won't be new birds. They'll see each other through the fence and whatever. Back to the footage, now that I've got that fire going. It's time to set about making sure everything is clean and ready for processing. And so this is our processing sink, which originally started out as a countertop made from maple, and it was actually scrap maple that I had from when I built my apple press, and I built a really nice countertop for the sinks, and it was basically the same concept, the same layout that we have here, where I had both sinks, one on either end, and then a nice big counter in the middle. And I originally had that to where it was built for processing apples for the press. And so the small sink on the left, closest to the camera, was intended to be the grinding sink, and it actually had a one-horse garbage disposal attached to it, stainless steel garbage disposal, that was bought brand new for the purpose of grinding. And then the larger sink on the right, where I'm working on this particular bird at the moment, was intended for the apple washing station. And so it just drained out a tube to draw the water away from where you're working, and you would dump a bunch of apples in and wash them and set them on the center area, and then that's where you could chop them up, core them, cut them into slices, whatever, depending on whatever we were doing. It ended up evolving, and we replaced the countertop because the polyurethane that I had ended up using to treat it turned out to not be very UV resistant, and it ended up after a couple of years falling apart and flaking. So I had a job working at an appliance store, and they had an old Sub-Zero fridge door that was in inventory and had been in inventory for I think 12 years, 11 or 12 years, and they were trying to clear out inventory and get rid of things that shouldn't be there anymore. And after several times of several discussions and debates about what to do with it, the decision was finally that nobody was ever going to order this one because the door was ordered wrong. It opened the wrong way or something, and they finally decided that it was time to just get rid of it because they were basically never going to use it. The people who had that particular fridge, I guess they were holding on to it just as a just-in-case type thing. But anyway, I digress. So they said, well, okay, it's time to get rid of it. Go ahead and just throw it away. And I said, okay, it's a big giant sheet of stainless steel. Can throw it away mean put it in the bed of my truck? And they said, sure, why not? So I took it home and drilled some holes in it and mounted some sinks, and now I have a counter for working, and we can actually use the door handle as a hanger, and we've hung things off that, and eventually the wood structure for that particular it was 3 sections of sink, and they ended up falling apart and just getting bumped around, and the joints became weak. So we ended up replacing that with some steel. But anyway, this is some footage. We had a cherry tree that fell, and it blows my mind how tall fruit trees can get out here. I grew up under the impression that fruit trees don't get more than 20 or 30 feet tall, and apparently that's because they are put on dwarf root balls. This particular cherry tree was almost 90 feet tall, and it was leaning against an ash tree, so it had to come down because it was an unsafe tree. But we set all that wood aside and ended up using a lot of it for smoking and cooking, and that was just the process of cleaning that. So anyway, that'll be the end of the footage for today. So as always, thank you for watching. God bless you and yours, and stay safe and healthy out there.